Hello, I'm Jack and this is Entertainment World, and today I'll be doing The Batman spoiler video. Now, I just want to say really quickly, I'm so sorry for how long this video took to come out, because I wanted to watch The Batman a couple times first, and then I did obviously my spoiler-free video for that, and then in between filming that video and editing it, I got really ill and was just in bed for a week. So I apologise for how long this has taken. It's been a month since the film came out, and I am sorry about that. But yes, I'll be doing this now, and also I wanted to do a video for Moon Knight Episode 1 and now Morbius as well. I've gone to see Morbius. I'll be going to watch it again tonight because somebody else wants to go watch it, and I said, yeah, I'll go with them. So that's that. Yeah, Morbius. But I'll be doing my video for that as well, and in the same video I'll be talking about Sony's Spider-Man universe, or Sony's universe of Marvel characters, or whatever the fuck it's called. I'll be doing a video combining my Morbius review and a discussion about that whole thing in general, because there's a lot about that I want to say. So yes, we're doing a video on that, and that's why the order of this is a bit all over the place, because I didn't know which I'd do first. My Morbius video might even come out before this one. My Moon Knight video definitely will be coming out before this one. Either way, I don't know what's going on with my scheduling. I apologise for that. It depends which one will come out first, Morbius or this. Either way, though, Moon Knight Episode 1 will be, my video for that will be coming out. And I've also been away this weekend, so I've been unable to do things then. So anyway, sorry for the delay. I'll be getting into it now. This will be not so much a review as more just talking about things which happen in the film, how I feel about them, as a fan of the character, as a fan of the franchise, as someone who likes Matt Reeves, as somebody who did really enjoy this film and would definitely recommend it. I mean, my score for the film was this. I did really love this film, but there's just a few things I want to talk about. I'll be starting off with some of the negative little things I have with the film first, because I want to get them out the way. And yeah, so I'll be starting off with them first. Okay, so the first thing that will come to my mind, and always does come to my mind, is when Batman's being shot point blank in the chest with a shotgun. He's injured. Catwoman saved him. They kiss. But criminal then grabs Catwoman, starts, trying to stab her, and Batman's struggling to get up because he's been winded. He's been, seriously hurt. And then he gets that drug out and he pumps it in, and he gets up, goes around, and tackles the guy to the ground and starts punching him in the face over and over and over and over and over again. And then Gordon has to come and literally get him off the guy and stop him from killing him, because, like I said, he's just punching him over and over again. That scene was great, and I love that, although the film isn't clear if that was just adrenaline he took, or if it was venom, which is Bane's drug, which makes Bane, the big, muscly, scary, angry guy. So I thought that was curious, because Batman in the comics has become addicted to venom before, so I thought, that would be quite an interesting thing to see, in live action. And if it was just adrenaline, the film makes quite a big thing about it, about him, like when him pinning him down and just punching him over and over again and literally almost killing him. I think that was a bit of a big thing to do if it was, yes, just adrenaline. But if it was venom, it doesn't ever specify that it was venom, nor where he got that from, nor how he, anything about it. And even though it could be, if it is venom, that's a cool little thing for the fans, and it was a cool moment in the film, you could have done more with that. If it was me personally, I would have had a scene earlier on in the film where, Alfred, his introductory scene when he's talking to Batman, he's like, if you keep this up, there won't be long before you have nothing left. In that scene, you could have had a bit where he's rummaging through Batman's things, and he's like, I can see you're even starting to take this, and you could have had a little reference alluded to Bane, like that drug lord you thought, or that crime boss, that mercenary, that sort of thing. You could have a little reference to Bane, little hint, because this film does have quite a few hints to show that Batman has encountered several of his main villains and several plot lines before the events of this film, and he's been Batman for over 2 years, so that's plenty of time for him to have had an encounter with Bane, or at least a basic alluded to version of Bane, sort of like a Gotham version of Bane. They could have easily done that, but they didn't mention that, And even though I still love that bit where he takes a drug, I just think because it wasn't worked its way into the story at an earlier point, and he just seems to get it out of nowhere, I just don't think it was as cool as it could have been. And had they had a bit of a scene dedicated to it and worked it into Alfred, you know, you won't have anything left if you keep this up. You're even starting to go down this road, and had a bit where it's like that, and explain how dangerous this drug was, and Alfred criticising it like it might make you stronger, but you know what it'll do to you mentally. And then that would have made that more effective when, you know, Batman literally almost straight up beat someone to death. That's just one little point that I have with that whole aspect of the film. Now, this bit I do have positives and negatives towards. So, his wingsuit. I like the idea of him having a wingsuit. It's a very basic version of Batman. It's a very early thing to have. It's also very realistic, having a wingsuit and parachute. And I love the bit where he's like strapping it and he's getting it ready. And then there's a dramatic bit where he's holding his arms out and he falls forward. I love that bit. I thought that was fantastic. My only question is, though, with him having a wingsuit, what's the point of the cape other than the fact that we've got to have a cape because Batman has a cape? Because surely if the cape doesn't really do anything, it's just more of a hindrance, like it shows later on in the film where the two criminals drag him by it, and he can't really do a lot. Like, surely if the cape doesn't actually do anything, it's just a hindrance and wouldn't actually benefit being Batman. Although there are a few moments where it does look like it shows him, it shows his full slowdown from a shorter distance. But again, that could just be more of like look for a dramatic effect, sort of aesthetic choice opposed to the cape actually doing anything. And like I said, overall I love the wingsuit, and I understand this is meant to be early days Batman. I do hope eventually he does get a more comic book accurate cape, where he actually uses the cape to glide, because otherwise it does lead to question what's the point of the cape. Also, the problem is with the wingsuit as well, is it shows in the film you can only really deploy it once with the parachute, so it's not as, you know, not useful as the cape would be. So even though I did love that sequence, again though, as he falls and the camera pans down, I love when the camera pans down and you got like a first person perspective of him gliding through Gotham. I thought that was great. The problem was then though, the camera pans in on his face, like a look at his face, and it has that same like bobblehead effect where skateboarders are videoing themselves with a head cam, and it looks like their head's not attached to their body and it's really close and it's really like all over the place, and it literally reminds me of that jokey ridiculous scene when Mark Wahlberg's character in Daddy's Home is like skateboarding all over the place and he's just got a bobblehead effect and it looks ridiculous. It did remind me a bit of that, which I don't think the big dramatic Batman flying gliding thing should have, gliding scene sequence, as cool as the rest of it was, I don't think that's really an effect you want to have when it comes to like, oh, Batman's got a weird bobblehead looking thing going on. But the rest of it was great, and it's not like ridiculous, it's not like silly, it's just that it does look a bit like I wouldn't have gone with that considering how it does look. I would have tried to do something else, because the problem is with that, even though the first person bit was great, that just that little bit there looks a bit silly. But it doesn't massively detract, it's just a little thing where it's like it becomes a negative for the overall sequence, which otherwise was one of the coolest sequences in the entire film, and it's a shame because it does sort of take away from it, albeit not a lot, but still enough where it's worth mentioning here. Now, as you may or may not know, this film had a prequel book come out, which I've read, I enjoyed. I thought it was quite a good prequel book for this film. The problem is with this film though, is I feel like there are elements of this film which are made significantly better having read the book, and I don't know how well or effective they would have worked had you not, such as like the book specifically stating Riddler lived at the Wayne orphanage. He was there in the choir when Thomas Wayne ran for mayor. He met Bruce Wayne and took an immediate disliking to him because he read everything he did, he read wrong. If somebody asked him a question, so Edward, you know, what are you doing today? He viewed that as interrogation. He didn't view it as them politely asking, you know, what are you doing today? How are you? Just trying to be polite. And when Bruce Wayne smiled at him as a little boy, when they were both little boys, where Bruce Wayne's with his parents going to, his dad's announcing his run for mayor, and Edward was part of the choir at the orphanage, and Bruce Wayne smiled at him. He viewed that as Bruce making fun of him, looking down at me, thinks he's so much better than me, and all of that, and it's like, nah, he was actually smiling at you to be nice. In fact, he was also quite sociably awkward and quite nervous, so you just really read into that wrong. It explains his love for puzzles, explains that he hates people who he thinks view themselves as being better than him, his hate for rich people, his hate for the people in power, and it also goes into the fact he's the one who burnt down the orphanage, but it was Wayne Manor that had been donated to become the orphanage, similar to the ending of The Dark Knight Rises, and the Waynes moved into Wayne Tower, but then a week later, obviously they were killed, so it didn't really matter that much. But it did go into that details more, so when I was watching the film, I was like, oh no, I get it more. I understood everything, and I understood where it was going with the setup, like when when they walk into the old orphanage, and then when there's like the scenes on the wall, and when you go in Riddler's apartment, and there's pictures of him as a choir boy, and he's like staring at the camera really creepily, and he's like drew a circle around his face to highlight himself and how close he was to Bruce Wayne. And I understand in terms of like distance. Sorry, he wasn't close to him. He never liked Bruce Wayne, but it was enhanced by the book, and I just don't know, because I did read the book before I watched the film. I don't know how any of that would have played out had I not, and would have it been anywhere near as effective as it was. I'm guessing it could have led to the more mystery side of things, and if you're going in for the full mystery, like the reveal could have been more effective. I don't know, but because I didn't experience it from that angle, I just don't know how that weighed out. It could have been negative, it could have been a positive, but I did want to put it here because I do think the film, from my viewing experience, was enhanced from having read the book, which just means that the film relied a little bit on the book too much, unless you were going for more alluding to mystery side of things, and then obviously you could argue the book made the film worse. I don't know, but that's just from my personal experience. Though there are things which could justify this, and even now I actually can also think of a few examples as to why it would, I am a bit curious to why Batman kept letting Penguin go. He never arrested him. He goes to his, the Iceberg Lounge to interrogate him early on in the film about the mayor. What was he doing here? Who is she? Who killed her? Who killed him? What do you know? And I love that scene, especially when he's like, don't you know my reputation? And Batman goes, yeah, I do. Do you? Basically showing, yeah, you're a bitch. That's your reputation. I love that bit, but he lets him go. He does a drug deal, Penguin does a drug deal with Catwoman right in front of Bruce Wayne, or a drug delivery, she's delivering it for him. And he never really questions that, and I just thought that was a bit odd that he did that in front of Batman, and Batman doesn't like, alright, whatever. Although, again, he is there solving a murder mystery, and he could think, there's not much point doing this right now, and with all the corruption going on, I would need to be able to, obviously, get more people on my side, get more of a case on this. And it could be sort of like in the Arkham games where he spots something and goes, I'll make a mental note of that, because he does watch it happen, so it could be just him making a mental note and it's like, right, I'll capture the serial killer first and then I'll come back on this. So I could argue like that. And again, though, later on in the chase sequence, which I will talk about the chase sequence and the positives because I loved it, as shown in the trailer, there's a huge explosion which Batman's like the Batmobile launches over, and as cool as that is, people have just been injured and or even possibly killed in that, and Batman again just lets them go, and there's that joke where Penguin's been tied up with to his hands and his feet, and he's like waddling, you're not going to leave me here, you sons of bitches, and it was funny, but again it's like, why'd you let him go? Although again the argument could be, Gordon is helping Batman without the police knowing right now. In fact, they think Batman assaulted Gordon, and there's an arrest warrant out for Batman, so it could be like, yeah, well, like, how were you there? How did you know what happened? And they did go there without a warrant, and they did just, Gordon himself did just shoot 2 people in that shootout. So there could have been like implications with this where they were like, probably not best to pursue this in this very moment. And again, there is bigger things to do. There is a serial killer who is targeting people, who does clearly have an end plan, who does have an end goal, and they had just discovered a huge piece of it with the website. So again, I could justify it, but it's just a bit of a weird thing to me that Batman just keeps letting Riddler go. I mean, Penguin go, when Penguin's clearly doing things which are extremely illegal. I go, even though I have just myself just possibly justified it a bit, so I can see why there would be arguments against why he didn't. But it is just something which has stuck in my mind a bit, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about that fully just yet, so I did just wanted to put it here, at least for now. Right, are we now talking about the positives I have with this film, or at least some of them anyway? But quickly, just wanted to say, finally got my The Batman hoodie, which is not obvious so far, because you couldn't see it. But I love this. I also bought a shirt, which I love it, but I'm not wearing it under this right now. I'm just wearing one of my other shirts because I'm actually going out after videoing this, or even possibly before I'm able to finish it. So I have to finish it when I get back, or even later. I don't know. Hopefully, just when I get back. But because of that, I didn't really want to wear that shirt as well, because if I have to take my hoodie off later, I think it'd be a bit much if I took the Batman hoodie off and I've got the Batman shirt under it. I would think that's a bit much, but it's great, and I didn't want to keep getting changed, but it's a great shirt and I love this hoodie. So anyway, back to the video. I just wanted to point that out because I'm really happy with this. Well, this hoodie, sorry. So one of my first positives is I love Batman's homeless person disguise. I fucking love that, how he walks around Gotham dressed like that. He isn't always dressed in his Batman gear. I think he's got his Batman gear under it, and he puts his mask on, which he's carrying around in his backpack. I love that idea. I love that, and I think that's great. He's talking early in the film through his narration. He's like, I've got to choose my targets carefully, and I love that. And he's walking around dressed like that, seeing what might need Batman, and then appears as Batman. I love that. I thought that was great. And I love earlier when he's in the subway and he's putting the makeup on and he's getting his mask ready, and you see his mask and stuff like laid out. I thought that was so cool. He's applying the eye thing, and I just thought that was great. And it's very reminiscent of the very first little teaser thing from like 3 years ago when it was just a costume reveal. I thought that was fantastic. I love that bit. And I just love the overall concept of that. And I actually wouldn't have thought of that if I was like, oh, what would I do if I was making a Batman franchise, and how would I make it different? I love that concept. I love the idea, and I love how he goes into places like the Iceberg Lounge later on in the film dressed like that, and then dresses up as Batman once he's in there. I thought that was fantastic. Also, speaking of him applying, his eye makeup, I love that this film finally fucking acknowledges that Batman wears eye makeup under his mask. When he takes the mask off, guess what? He's got makeup on around his eyes. I fucking love that. And that is something I have always thought. And I always thought if I was making a Batman film, that is what I would have. I would definitely have that, because it makes more sense. And I hate in Batman Returns when, like, it's showing him normal and he's got his eye makeup on. It cuts to Catwoman, it cuts back to him and his eye makeup's just disappeared. So when he takes his mask off, it's just Michael Keaton. And I was like, no, he should be wearing eye makeup. And it's like they were scared of being silly. And yes, if they were just perfect circles, it probably would be a bit. But having it being a bit like drooped down and a bit more like war paint, I thought, yeah, that just looks fucking cool. Like in the fucking reveal trailer, in the first trailer from DC Fandom 2020 at the end, when it's like, you're part of this, how am I part of this, you'll see, and it cuts to him. He's got that dramatic look with the eye makeup on. I was like, how the fuck does that not look cool? That just looks fantastic. Like, that's perfect. So
you're part of this too. How am I part of it? You'll see.
I'm so glad they finally acknowledged it, because it is, not only is it more realistic, whereas makeup just doesn't appear and just vanishes for no reason because they're scared that it will make it look weird. not only does it make more logical sense, but it actually fucking looks cool. I love that. I love that they acknowledge that. And I'm finally, and that is one of the first things I praised this film for. Before it even came out, just right off the gate, I was like, finally, he acknowledges his eye makeup. I fucking loved it. The first 15 minutes of this film is fucking great. So like, it starts off, as you know, Riddler kills the mayor. That scene is fucking brutal. It plays out like a horror film. I love when it's like, you see him spying through like the window, and then you see him go look at the roof, and then him go through there, and then he's standing in the background, and when the mayor moves and the television lights up, it reveals the Riddler standing there, and you're like, oh my god, that's really creepy. He doesn't know he's there, and then Riddler just clobbers him with Tucker. So yeah, and brutally beats him to death, and then proceeds to tie his... Well, actually, no, it turns out he was still alive at that point, apparently, but you know what I mean. He knocks him down with it, and then ties his head up, which he later writes no more lies on, and then it cuts to Batman narration, and I love Batman narrating it. I thought that was a brilliant way to open and end the film with Batman's narrating, where it's him writing down his journal, which actually was also mentioned in the book, which I love that idea. And that first 15 minutes, this whole 15 minutes, is one of the best first 15 minutes of any film I've ever watched. It's one of my favourite openings of any film I've ever watched. I fucking love it. I love everything he says. This film captures fully, you know, like, people scared to go in the shadows, the criminals, like the guy who does a robbery of the shop, and then you got those other people doing graffiti on what looks like the courthouse or something like that. And when the guy's about to run down the street, he then decides not to and backs away and gets hit by a taxi, and then when the guy drops his spray can and it goes into one of the rooms, he doesn't go in there, and it's like, they're scared of the shadows, but I am the shadows. I fucking love that, and I love where he's like, I can't be everywhere at once, which shows that crime's still happening. However, what I love is it just shows how fucking scary Batman actually is, and how the effect of Batman is this nocturnal animal, this creature in the night, this, you know, spooky boogeyman figure, like, don't do bad or the bat will get you. I fucking love that, and like I said, I love everything Batman says. You know, we have a signal now for when they need me. I fucking love that. And then it cuts to that gang chasing that poor guy down on the train station. They beat him up, mug him, and Batman, of course, comes out the shadows. This is what Chris Stuckman mentioned, and I also mentioned it when I did my spoiler-free review, because of what he pointed out, is I love how you hear his footsteps, his big thumping sound before you see him, and he comes out of the shadows. So the first shadows, he's not there, second shadows, he's not there, and they run. They're scared, they don't go in. But these people who stay, Batman comes out of the fucking shadows. And of course you get that incredibly famous moment from the trailer, who the hell are you supposed to be? And then he gets absolutely fucking obliterated, and you get one of the most iconic lines ever, I'm vengeance.
The hell are you supposed to be?
I'm vengeance.
I love that, and I love that fight as well. I thought that was a great fight. As in, like, the whole thing with all the gang, because you actually feel like Batman's hurting them. It doesn't feel like it's cutting away, it doesn't feel fake. It feels like Batman's just breaking their arms, breaking their jaw, you know, breaking all their fingers, breaking their ribs, everything. I'm just picturing all the broken bones that would have happened because of that fight. I love it. I love when that guy shoots him and it just deflects off it and bounces off, and it actually looks like the bullet hits somebody else, and Batman grabs him and tases him by the neck. I fucking love that. And then he beats them all. And this one guy who was part of the gang who was hesitant, who the actor who plays him, I don't know what he's called, up at his name there, is actually now playing Tim Drake Robin on Titans. I thought that's quite cool. It's funny how Titans came out way before this did, season 3 that is, but I thought, you know, still great. He runs, and what I love then is the guy who Batman's just saved is cowering on the floor going, please don't hurt me. It just shows that Batman is terrifying to everybody. I fucking love that, and he looks up, and you see the bat signal in the sky, and he's done a really dramatic shot of him standing there. I love that. I also love the bat signal, how it's not on the roof of the police building. It's just like this old searchlight on a what looks like an abandoned construction site with just scraps of metal being screwed to it to make it like a vague bat symbol. I fucking love that. And I love like the whole scene where he's investigating the mayor's murder, and he's standing in like the room, and the police are like, whoa, 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 police only, and they let him and Gordon tells him to let him through, and he's like, you kidding me? And he's letting him wander around, and everybody's nervous. And I love the bit where the forensic guy's looking, and he goes to walk, and Batman's like right there, and he goes, excuse me, and Batman just sort of like steps back. I love how like the no more lies, and you know, what does a liar do when he dies? I can't remember exactly what the quote. He lies still. He solves the riddle almost immediately. I love that whole scene with the police commissioner. Like, how do you know he's not involved? He's a vigilante. And I love that bit where, like, the press is out there. I love that whole scene.
From your secret friend. Underneath the bridge. Who? Topper sprung a leak. And the animals I've trapped. Having a clue. All become my pet. Let's play a game. Just me and you. Any of this mean anything to you?
But the bit I think I love most is when he says the kid found him, and he looks at the boy, and the boy's getting questioned, and he's all sad and looks up, and he looks at Batman, and they just stare at each other, because you know, as the audience, you know Batman knows exactly how that feels, and that is why he's doing what he's doing, and why he's just like that, and right there in that moment. I love that. And then it leads to something in the way which was incredible. And I actually had a bet with my dad, would that be in the film or not? Because it was in the trailer. And I said it wouldn't be. And he said, I think it would be, and I think it'll be in the opening. And I lost that bet. And I said, I just think it'll be in the credits. It wasn't in the credits, but it was at the end of the film as well. I did lose that bet. Anyway, and then that more narration, like 2 years of doing this, nothing getting better, seems to be getting worse. I don't know if what I'm doing is working. This city is a lost cause, but I have to try. I love that whole bit. Him driving his motorbike, him driving down the like through the cemetery into the old subway station, driving down the subway stairs, driving down the platform, and then obviously the doors to the Batcave open. Him go through, and it's the underground railway station, which the book revealed was a private station built for his parents directly underneath Wayne Tower. I love that. I love the Batcave. I think it's a really cool Batcave. More realistic, practical, very basic. I thought that was brilliant. Overall, it's a fantastic opening 15 minutes. Perfectly sets the tone for the overall film. Love everything that happens in it. Love the action. Love the conversations. Love the set piece. Love the violence. Love the darkness. Love how it fully captures like the Batman being an urban legend. Fucking loved every second of it. It's one of the best opening 15 minutes of any comic book film I've ever watched, and actually just one of the best opening 15 minutes of any film I've ever watched. I fucking loved every single second of it. It was absolutely fucking amazing. Sorry, I have actually been out to see Morbius since the rest of the video. So yeah, I'm filming this after having gone to see Morbius for a second time. And having come back from that, I now feel really tired, and I'm 110% sure that neither of those two neither of those two things are related in any way. I'm sure they're completely separate things. Anyway, I do have some positive to say about Morbius, but I'll talk about that in my review. Anyway, so I love how this film actually finally acknowledges the Iceberg Lounge. I love how it uses it quite a lot. I like how it's quite a big location of this film. The Iceberg Lounge is something I've really wanted to see in a Batman film, and I'm so glad we finally got to see it in this one. I like how it's a sort of a underground disco rave where there's drugs going on, and then there's an even more secret bar, the 44 Below, directly under it. I love all of that. I thought that was great. Yes, it could have been more Iceberg Penguin themed had they wanted it to be, but the thing is, it actually belongs to Carmine Falcone at the moment and not the Penguin. But that could change now. But you know, because at the end of the film Falcone gets killed and Penguin becomes the new boss. Maybe it does actually become more Penguin themed, although the director Matt Reeves has come out and said that the Penguin doesn't like being called Penguin. I don't know if they'll stick with that, but you know, if that will change, or if that's going to be a forever thing for this version of the character. Either way, I still loved it was finally in this film. And a lot of the scenes in the Iceberg Lounge are actually some of my favourite scenes in the film. Obviously I love the whole things with the twins, where he opens the door and he's Batman, and they like question him and he beats the shit out of them and then walks through, power walks, and then there's that whole fight scene there where several of Penguin's henchmen come and try and beat him up and even start shooting at him, but Batman just obviously kicks the shit out of them because he's Batman, so fuck them. And then Penguin comes and introduces himself. I thought that was quite funny. And even though I question Batman letting him go, I did love the whole Batman interrogation scene of Penguin inside his little box glass office thing, lounge area. Especially, like I said, when he pins him up against the wall and is like, "Don't make me hurt you," and he goes, "Don't you know my reputation?" "Yeah, I do you?" I love that. That's probably my top 5 moments in the whole film, that little exchange there. I thought that was great. I love when he goes back there later as Bruce Wayne again with the twins, and it's a similar interaction. "Do you know who I am?" And they're like, "Yeah," and they let him in. I thought that was funny, parallel compared to early on in the film. And then the final bit where he doesn't talk to them, he just runs past them and then locks them out. I thought that was cool, when he's trying to get in the last time to save Selina Kyle or to stop her from killing Falcone. I love every scene in that. I love obviously that whole Falcone thing as well, with her dad and Falcone being her dad and her trying to kill her because she got her friend killed. I loved every scene in the Iceberg Lounge. I think those they definitely were some of my favourite scenes of the whole film, and I thought they were all brilliant. Certainly, I've just touched on it lightly, but I love the whole thing with Selina Kyle and her plot and trying to get, I assume it's her girlfriend, safe, but unfortunately, as you know, she is killed off screen, albeit you do get a audio clip of it, of her being killed by Falcone, who turns out to be Selina Kyle's dad, and I thought that was great. It was a great twist. It gave a good lot of motivation for Selina Kyle wanting Falcone dead and how that conflicts with what Batman needs Falcone for. And I thought Defender being in danger was a great motivation for Selina Kyle to help Batman in the first place. And I love the sequence of like her trying to kill Falcone and Batman stops her from killing her killing him at the last second. And she says, you know, he has to pay, and he says, "You paid enough, you don't need to pay with him." I love that, especially considering it is implied by that point that Falcone got his parents killed, so that just shows how, like, willing to take the moral high ground Batman is here, and I love that. And I love that he's, you know, actually goes out of his way to not only stop her from killing Falcone, but also to help her and basically save her from going to prison for like 30 years. So I love that. I love that side of Batman, and I love that side of Catwoman. I love how the Iceberg Lounge is, you know, obviously that's how where she's introduced as well, as somebody who does delivery, drug delivery, sort of Penguin delivering what I assume is called, I think it's called Drop, is the drug in this film. I thought that was great, and the Iceberg Lounge is probably the most important location in this whole film, because it's a place that is revisited most and has like the most plot going around it, and all the characters, and how a lot of things are set up there. Like, it's where a lot of the corrupt people in Gotham go. It's where the whole Falcone plot is. It's where the whole Penguin subplot and his rise to power will be in future films and his little spin-off series. It's where Catwoman's introduced and her motivations, and it's where a lot of the coolest Batman scenes happen as well. And I just love the whole sequence. Actually, speaking of Catwoman in the Iceberg Lounge, where she's got her the like recording cameras in her eyes, and Batman's like looking through and IDing people. That was a great sequence. I love that. And she meets a DA who's a really creepy person, played by Peter Sarsgaard. He's good at it, and obviously he then gets captured by the Riddler and blows up. That was a great sequence as well, actually, that whole bomb scene. I love the bomb scene. That was probably the most suspenseful scene, where he gives him like the 3 riddles and 2 minutes to do them, and he won't do the last one, which is who's the rat, because there's a rat informing Gotham there was a rat informing Gotham police and city officials about Salvatore Maroni's drug operations, which is like the biggest drug bust in Gotham history. That whole plot, I think that was great, and how that is actually what the big secret which Riddler's trying to show is that the biggest drug bust in history was actually a fraud which Falcone did to become the biggest kingpin in Gotham, and basically have every Gotham City official and basically his entire police department work for him. I love that. I thought that was all great. So, but yeah, Iceberg Lounge, everything revolves around that in a way. So I love that, and I love how important it is, and I love everything that happens there, and all the things that happen because of that. I love basically everything to do with that location in this film. Bruce and Alfred have a great relationship. Well, it's a unique relationship. It's not great for them. It's a bit awkward and hostile, but certainly great as an audience. I love how, like I mentioned this in my spoiler-free review, how Alfred's sort of like trying to meet Bruce halfway, so he's like trying to show he's still there for him, he's still supportive and trying to help him and guide him through this, whilst also disapproving of what Bruce Wayne is doing as Batman. And Bruce Wayne is just sort of like disinterested in everything Alfred has to say, and is even going so far to like push him away and say like, Alfred, you're not my father. And now when Alfred gives him his cufflings, what, are you a Wayne now? It's just like, I love that how Bruce is just so hostile towards him, but in a way where you can tell he's just doing it to try and get him away, like, go away, I don't, you know, if you're not going to fully help me, I don't care, I'm not interested. So that was a great, unique relationship, and I love how this film actually now finally uses Alfred to hurt Bruce with, like, when the Riddler puts the bomb, delivers the bomb to Wayne Tower and through the letter, and Alfred opens the letter and reads it, and it's got the C4 explosive in it, and he chucks it away at like the last second, and he gets injured. I actually thought he could have died. I'm not disappointed he didn't die. I felt like it was the reveal was a bit anticlimactic, like him just being in the hospital was a bit like, oh, okay, fair enough. But I still love that, you know, he's alive, and I love the conversation they have at the hospital. That was actually one of the more emotional moments of this film, but I just love that this film actually used Alfred as a way to hurt Bruce in that way, because the last film to do that like that was Batman and Robin, so we don't really talk about that, not in a good way anyway. But I like that it did that, and it reminded me of Arkham Origins, and that whole sequence in Arkham Origins where, you know, Deathstroke is threatened to kill, not Deathstroke, Bane, sorry. Bane is like threatened to, tries to kill Alfred and blow up the Batcave. I thought that was fantastic, so I think that this was fantastic that it used that, because that was one of the best parts of Arkham Origins, so I loved that this film, actually one of my favourite bits of the whole Arkham series as a whole, so I loved that this film used that sort of side of things as a way to hurt Bruce. I thought that was fantastic, and like I said, it led to one of the most emotional conversations throughout the film. That was great, so I'm very pleased that this film did that. Each of the Riddler murders and the saw-like traps and the riddles, I thought they were really dark actually, and although they could have been dark in terms of like the amount of gore they showed, just the implication enough was for me to be like, oh, that's quite a lot. So I love that they did that. I thought that was really great. I love the riddles, and I love the whole plot of like it all being part of this mystery where Batman's trying to capture Riddler, but he's also trying to solve and is intrigued by what Riddler's doing. Because even though Riddler's the villain and a serial killer, he's a vigilante himself in a way, and he's taken inspiration from Batman, and he admits that later on in the film. He's just going about it in a very sadistic and unhelpful way, and in a sort of way where he needs to be stopped because he's going to get innocent people hurt as well as the fact he's brutally murdering people who, even though are guilty, should be like put in court and tried and not had their face eaten by rats like the police commissioner had. So that was horrible, but I love that this film went for that sort of thing. I also love like the phone calls and the video messages and the like live Instagram videos that he was doing. That was brilliant. And as I mentioned, the whole bomb sequence with the DA was one of the coolest scenes in the whole film, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of cool scenes in this film. Certainly one of the most suspenseful, and probably one of the most suspenseful scenes in any Batman film ever made. So I love that bit so much, and that was, I think at that moment where it's like counting down, he's like, no, at least this way, it's just me dying. If I'd say to that, other people I know will get hurt as well, people I love, and he's willing to blow up, and he actually blows up on screen. I think it was like that moment where you're like, this film's, I mean, I had thought it beforehand, but that just like solidified, oh, this film's really willing to go there, and it doesn't give two shits and won't pull many punches when doing so. I love that aspect. So yeah, I'm glad that, like, for a film which is a murder, mystery, detective, horror film, well, horror elements to it, I love that it wasn't, like, hindered by what it was trying to do. Because if everything was really tame and the Riddler murders weren't graphic, I mean, they weren't graphic in the sense of being shown, but if the implications alone hadn't been graphic, if it didn't have the same urgency which the film gave, if it didn't have like the bomb scene, if it didn't have the rats with the commissioner, if it didn't have like him beating the mayor to death with a carpet tucker and like then cutting his thumb off and putting on a thumb drive and all of these things, if it didn't go for that, it would have been a lot less effective for what the main point of the film is, which is like the murder, mystery, detective side of this film. So I'm glad that it actually went as much as it could do, whilst like still being marketable as a comic book superhero film. So I'm really glad that they did that. I'm really happy that they didn't pull too many punches with it. Obviously they could have, it didn't feel like they were pulling punches, it just like, it could have been darker, but you could say that with any film, even films like Saw, you're like, well, it could be more violent. Just because something could be more violent doesn't mean it should be more violent, because nobody looks at a Saw film and thinks, that's not gory enough. Like, it could be more gory, but do you really want it to be, and do you really need it to be? So, yeah, I think the Batman, for what this film is and is trying to do, and how this film works, and everything like that, I think what they did was perfect enough, and I'm glad that they went as far as they actually did. So, really happy with that, and they deserve praise and thanks for actually having the balls to do that. So that was great. And just keeping on Riddler for a minute, I just love that whole interrogation scene at the end where the film builds up and you think, oh my god, Riddler knows who, Batman's Bruce Wayne. And for the first time watching it, I actually thought he did. It wasn't until the second time watching it that I actually caught on. I don't know why that went over my head. I think I was just, well, it's because also, like I said in my spoiler-free review, I really needed to pee for like the whole film, so I was probably just not really concentrating at that point. I was like, come on, I want to go. But I didn't want to miss anything, and ironically I missed that. So, yeah. But, he doesn't know who Bruce Wayne is. I just love that whole conversation, because he's like, Bruce Wayne. And he's like, it sounds like he's having a dig at Batman, because he knows he's Bruce Wayne, and there's like the stuff in his apartment. I know who you really are. And then he's like, Bruce Wayne. He's the only one we didn't get, but we all got that. We got those sleazy, all those other sleazy rich pricks, didn't we? And you're just like, oh, so you don't know that he's Bruce Wayne? You're just having a weird rant about the fact you didn't kill him. Okay, and I love when like Batman turns his off, is like, I'm not on your side. You're a sick psychopath. He's like going, no, this is not how this was supposed to go. And he's like, we were going to watch this all together. Also, the way he says together is really weird, but I love that bit. And he's like, watch what? All of it. And he's like, you haven't figured it out, have you? Maybe I gave you too much credit. You're really not as smart as I thought you were. And I love how he's doing that, as well as saying, my strength is up here. When he hasn't figured out that Bruce Wayne's Batman, he's like figured everything else out. He can't figure that out, and he's now going, I'm so smart up here, this is where my strength is, and then proceeds to go on a rant about how Batman's dumb. And yet he's just went on a 3-minute rant about Bruce Wayne. whilst talking to Bruce Wayne and doesn't fucking realise it. So, you know, but I did love it when he's like, I know who you really are, this is the most real you've ever been. Because even though he hasn't figured out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, he has figured out that Batman's not the disguise, Bruce Wayne's the disguise for Batman. So I like how he at the very least figured that out, because he's like, I see that with you. I see you in me. And I see how we're the same, when he's saying, like, when I wore my mask, it was the most open I've ever been. There was no shame, I wasn't hiding, this is actually who I am. The Riddler, I'm not Edward Nashton, I'm the Riddler, the same way you're not, well, he doesn't know who he is, but you're not Bruce Wayne, you're Batman. I love how he figured that bit out, and I just love, it felt quite Jokerish, and actually, in the deleted scene, which I'll make a video on, I know it's late, but I still want to make a video on that. That's also hinted at. Maybe another reason why I deleted it, but still, I wish they kept it in the film. Either way, I just love how they both figure out, they both know that whoever Batman is underneath, you know, we know it's Bruce Wayne, but whoever it is underneath, that's not who they really are. Batman is who they really are. That was great. I just love that whole scene. Some people, I found it a little bit funny, but I also found it quite disturbing, and a lot of people, I think, just found it funny when I went to watch it, because a lot of people laughed when he's going, no, I don't want to act it out, but I don't want to try to act it out, I should say, but still, when he's just like elongating every other word. But I actually found it quite creepy, because it clearly just shows he's mentally unstable, and being rejected, he did not take it very well. So, yeah, but I just love that whole sequence, and also completely changing subject, but, you know, talking about conversation and things like that. Bruce Wayne and Catwoman have great conversations in this film. I loved every single one. A lot of great dialogue, like the one in the trailer where Batman's like, you have a lot of cats. And she goes, I have a thing for strays. I'm like, man, that is really flirtatious sexual energy. And that's quite early on as well. That was a very forward sort of, like, oh, okay, that's really flirty. And they have a lot of moments like that where it's just, you can tell that she likes him and he likes her, and they clearly have a lot of energy between them, but, you know, at the end he's like, no, I've got to protect Gotham. And she's like, I'm going to go to Bloodhaven and, you know, get away from all the crazy fucking shit which has just happened in the last week, because fuck this. Fair enough attitude to have. Hope she comes back for another film, you know, in future films. I just think it, for the time being, that was a pretty justified attitude to have for both versions of the character, because considering their characters and who they are and what they want to achieve, I can see why she was like, I'm getting out of this fucking crazy shit place, and he's like, no, I've got to stay and protect this fucking crazy shit place. But this Batman and Catwoman is my favourite Batwoman and Catwoman relationship dynamic and portrayal that I've seen in live action. It's my favourite so far. I loved it. I love their flirtatious relationship. I love their sort of starting off begrudgingly helping, well, Catwoman begrudgingly helping Batman, but then starting to do it willingly, and, you know, coming to save him at the end. I just love that, and I think it was the most natural sort of like progression and build, and felt the most realistic to them actually starting to fall for each other and have an actual willing mutual partnership, opposed to just being like blackmail. So, or offer, like, I'll make her an offer she can't refuse. Like, I love how this film actually made it go from a, I'll help you find your friend, help me, and even after it turns out the friend's dead, you know, she still helps him and he helps her and stops her from making a big mistake. So, with killing Falcone and actually caring about her and making sure she remains safe. I love the natural build-up and progression that this relationship had. Yes, it's been my favourite so far out of the live-action Batwoman and Catwoman relationships. So I was very happy with that. Also, quickly, when they see the reveal of, like, the friend Annika being dead in the back of the car, I love how Bruce Wayne, Batman, actually has like a shocked, sympathetic face. Like, and even though he was then shot at by Penguin, not happened. I feel like he would have tried to comfort her with like trying to talk to her or something like that, or try and talk about murdering everyone there and getting killed herself. So yeah, I just love their overall dynamic in this film. The final battle is albeit a little bit short in terms of action, I thought it was a great climax of this film because, you know, Riddler's in prison, but it turns out he'd already put these bombs around Gotham, sets them off, and it causes the city to flood. And he's actually got like a group chat, social media forum on, you know, the internet, and he's basically recruited an army of Riddlers. And whilst everybody, including the mayor's, like gathered in this building, and she starts to give a speech, and she gets shot at by one of the snipers, and then the police have to try and like save her and give returning fire, and then like the roof blows up. Batman falls through this really dramatic jump, and it's one of the only times where the cape's actually trying to do anything. And there's that really great scene between like Batman and Riddler's army. I thought that was fantastic. I thought that was very suspenseful. I love, right, it really shows how bulletproof Batman's armour is, because he's getting shot at by 50 caliber rifles, and he's just like, yep, I'm taking that and I'm going to fucking beat the shit out of you. I thought that was great. Some of the best fights, action bits in the whole film were in that, and some of the best, like, most brutal takedowns, and it felt quite video game-ish, but in a good way in terms of like, the combinations he uses and how he takes each one on. I love that, and like I said, I love the entrance with the explosion, the way he drops down. That was great, and I love how Catwoman comes to help him. And as I mentioned earlier, in the negatives, but it's still a positive of like Batman being shot in the chest with a shotgun, Catwoman saving him, but then she's in danger. He takes either a venom or just adrenaline or whatever it was, and beats the absolute living pulp of that guy. That was great. And like it's starting to flood, and the electric cable was going back and forth. The way he jumps on that, and then gets his knife out, which is his bat symbol, which I thought was a great aesthetic choice, and I loved the concept of that. Chops the cable down, falls in the water, and then there's that really hopeful scene where he starts getting the survivors out under the wreckage and saving them from drowning, and he like lights the flare, leads them out of there. I thought that was just, the whole thing was just great from start to finish. I love the whole sequence. It was very hopeful compared to like the rest of the film, which by that point had been quite a dark film, like in a good way because it was suited the film. It was a very optimistic ending, and I thought that was great, and I loved it, and I just loved the action, the effect of it. It looked great as well from a visual standpoint. The set was great, the stunts were great, the combat was, I mean, beautiful, and that's important for a Batman film. And yeah, just basically the whole thing of it was fantastic. And I love when, like, Batman, when they ask the Riddler guy, who are you? And he goes, I'm Vengeance. And Batman looks at him and he's realised he's going about this the wrong way, and going around beating the shit out of people saying, I'm Vengeance, is giving people like him and the Riddler and anyone else this inspiration to go out and do bad things, opposed to being a good thing for the city. I just thought that was a great message to add into what was already a fantastic action sequence. It was a great action sequence that led into that moment, which then led to the whole like Batman saving the, I think it was really important it being the mayor's son as well, which is the boy he like locked eye contact with as Batman, also as Bruce Wayne at the funeral for his dad, which I love that whole sequence as well. That was before the bomb thing, but it was set up for that. I love that. That was great where he's talking to people, and I love how the candidate for mayor goes up to him and is like, Bruce Wayne, you know, your family has a history of philanthropy, but as far as I'm concerned, you haven't been doing anything. It was like, yeah, we really don't know a lot there, because he's doing a lot more for this city than anyone else is at this moment in time. So, yeah, fuck off, bitch. Sorry, but I just thought that was quite a funny thing to say. Because also, you're actually shown in the news report at the very start of the film, with the current mayor, when they're doing like the run for mayor and they're arguing, she's clearly not for Batman, because she's like, we have a vigilante running our streets. So she clearly doesn't like Batman, but is asking Bruce Wayne to do more. So yeah, I love how it shows this duality that this woman has, where she's like, Bruce Wayne, do more, but fuck Batman. And it's just a very subtle little thing, but I thought that was a really cool decision to make as well. But yes, and she's hesitant to take Batman's hand when Batman reaches out to her, and the boy takes it, and then she takes it, and I just love that whole scene showing that Batman is saving Gotham and people are realising that he's a good thing. Sorry, my camera died last night whilst filming that last little point, and I decided that I was going to give up for the night anyway. I tried to film it a little bit again, but I just looked so tired after letting my camera charge for a bit, so I just thought, try and do this bit again. So I'm going to try and make this flow as seamlessly as possible. So yeah, because this is like I said, this is the next day, so I've had to put this back on just for the sake of finishing this video. So yeah, I'm just going to continue on now. Basically, like I said, the overall point was early, like last night, was I was just trying to say that the end battle was a brilliant action sequence. The whole like third act, the whole bit there was a brilliant action sequence, which ended in a really hopeful, good manner, and like putting a nice little bow, wrapping up that story with the emotional side of Batman leading everybody out of the flood, which had been something the film had been building up to, and wrapping up like people gaining trust in him, such as the new mayor and the mayor's son, and just the citizens of Gotham seeing Batman in a hopeful light, and Batman being more of a symbol for hope in that moment than a symbol of fear and vengeance. So I just love that whole bit there. So yeah, so I just wanted to wrap that little bit up. Wrap that bit up myself, you know, for the video. And then obviously the whole thing with the Wayne family as well is quite different with this film, opposed to just being a senseless act of violence. It actually was a point to it, because it's revealed, the Riddler reveals that, well, he reveals at the time that Thomas Wayne got a news reporter killed via Carmine Falcone because he was going to expose that his wife had been in, mental asylums and had become from an unstable family, and he tried to cover that up for the sake of his, his campaign to be mayor, and it was just a big shit show. And Batman goes to Carmine Falcone about it and asks him about it, and he tells him this yes, it's true, I did that, and then Salvatore Maroni then got your dad killed because he was scared that your dad would be in my pocket, not only because he's going to be a billionaire, he's a billionaire, but he's also going to be mayor now, so he did that to prevent that from happening. And it leads to that great scene with Bruce Wayne and Alfred in hospital, which does also lead to the whole point of Bruce Wayne never says anything nice to Alfred, because he's like, Alfred's been injured, he's hurt, and then as soon as Alfred comes out of his sort of coma, the first thing that Bruce Wayne says to him is, "You lied to me, Alfred, all my life," and proceeds to have a dig at him. But I think it was justified in that moment, because that is a pretty big thing to keep keep a secret from Bruce for his whole life. But I love that conversation where it's actually Alfred is like, "No, yes, your dad did go to Carmine Falcone to stop that article from coming out, but you didn't care about him, becoming mayor. It was because he just wanted to protect his mum, and the exposure that would cause, and most likely would probably make her mental health a lot worse, especially if all the focus is on her in a very negative light." So I like that he was willing to do that, because his Bruce Wayne, it's revealed at the funeral scene that Thomas Wayne and Carmine Falcone had a history, because Thomas Wayne saved Carmine Falcone's life by giving him surgery in the house. And Falcone says, "I never forgot the look in your eyes that day," talking to Bruce Wayne, watching the whole thing from the stairs. And I love that bit, because later on when Falcone gets shot by Riddler, he looks at Bruce Wayne, and there's sort of like a visual implication that he realises Bruce Wayne's Batman, because he had the same sort of look on his face as he did as a little boy, so he died realising Bruce Wayne was Batman. I thought that was a cool little thing, and that's what I took from that. I could be wrong, but that's certainly what I've taken from that. But yeah, it turns out that he went to him to get him to shush the reporter, but to not actually kill him. And when he realised Falcone had killed him, he then went to the police to, confess the whole thing. But Carmine Falcone then had him killed, so it's implied that, Falcone was lying. The Riddler got it wrong, because again, the Riddler looks at everything as the most negative way he could. He never allows for any other meaning from what he thinks is the most evil version of events, which is how he takes things from the book as well. Like I said, if you question him, he's not because you're being polite, it's just because you're quizzing him, you're interrogating him, you think you're better than him. So I view it as the same thing here, where he just took what was not a good thing, but wasn't meant to be malicious, and he made it a bad thing that was also malicious, and made it like not even just a bad thing, which was a terrible thing that happened, but also was a terrible thing just all round, and Thomas Wayne being an absolute piece of shit of a human, which he wasn't. He was just a desperate man who made a very fatal error in judgment, which caused the death of someone, which, and then him trying to rectify that mistake, probably should have kept the police bit to himself. Not that it would have made much difference, because there's obviously Carmine Falcone, who's revealed to basically be the unofficial mayor of Gotham, because he's that whole Sting drug operation thing, and he's just basically in charge of everything. You know, he got Thomas Wayne killed for threatening him, so, well, not even threatening him, just telling him what he was going to do. So, yeah, it's just showing how much of a piece of shit Carmine Falcone is. Going so far as well to strangling Selina Kyle's mum, and I love that scene actually, quickly, with Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle by the bat signal at like sunset or sunrise, I can't remember which way around it was, and they just have that really nice conversation, and I love that bit. And because Bruce Batman's really judgmental of her and insults her, and she then says how he's the father, her mum was killed, and it's also revealed that he strangled her mum to death, as well as strangling her friend to death, and then even going as far as to try and strangle her to death. He clearly likes strangling women to death, regardless if they're in a relationship with him, or even his biological daughter. He clearly is quite fucking insane. But what I love about that, not the strangling of women, of course, I don't like that, but what I love is when the audio of him killing Annika is released, basically a lot of everyone turns against him, because they're like, whoa, we were willing to turn a blind eye to things because you're so cool, but you've literally strangled what I can only assume is a late teens, or at the very best early 20s girl to death, just because she overheard something the mayor told her whilst he was pissed and off his head on drugs. You're not a very nice person, and obviously his goons who would be okay with that sort of thing also weren't happy with him because he's a rat. So basically everybody turns against him. The police who aren't on his payroll come to arrest him, and I just love how Batman brings him out, and there's a lot of police there, and everyone turns against him. I love that bit, and I love how, you know, he refers to Batman, you know, you with Zorro over here, when he's talking to Gordon, and Gordon, he's like, don't you know you boys in blue all work for me? And Gordon takes him out, and there's about 100 police standing there. I guess we don't all work for you. I just love that. There's so many bits of this film I love. I know this review's all over the place, I'm going back and forth with the spoilers, but there's just is so much of this film I love, from its aesthetic choices, its sound choices, the music choices. I love the chase scene, I love the action in this film, I love the dialogue, I love how everything's shot, well, almost everything's shot. I love the set locations, I love the just overall world and universe that's been built here, I love, and the backstory with the Waynes is different, and I'm glad it didn't show it as well. And yes, you could argue it turning out Thomas Wayne isn't a complete piece of shit is a little bit of a cop-out. I don't think it is, I just view it as more of this sort of like, because I think had he been a complete piece of shit, it does take away a lot from what the point of Batman is. And I think what the whole point of Batman in this universe is imperfection. Batman is imperfect. Batman's rude to Alfred. Unnecessarily rude. He's very judgmental of other people. He's very brutal in what he does. He's borderline psychotic. And he's just this lonely guy who goes out at night, is absolutely exhausted, wears eye contact lenses to record things so he can review evidence, and he's like, I have to force myself to remember, because he's just fucking exhausted. And even when he's out in public as Bruce Wayne, he's not Bruce Wayne, he's still Batman. It's like I said in my spoiler-free video, it's very reminiscent of Batman in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, where Ben Affleck Batman's going to Lex Luthor's party, and even though he's Bruce Wayne in that moment, he's only doing that to further the goals of being Batman. And this version of Batman's similar, because even when he goes to the funeral, he's still going as Batman, disguised as Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne isn't a person in this universe, he's just this guy who's depressed, lives alone, stays in the tower, and just waits for night where he can then finally go out and be himself. I know he's described him as a vampire, and as although that is very unfair for Ron Pattinson because everybody wants to compare him to Twilight, Batman in this film does have an element of that, where he is just this shell of a person during the day, and at night he goes out and he's at his full strength, he's at his full capacity, he is who he really wants to be, and he is just this violent, crazy person. So I love how that's reflected with the Waynes as well, is their backstory's imperfect. So yes, it creates an imperfect Batman in a very disgusting world, and I love that. I do love what this whole film is going for, and it takes to the end of the film for Batman to go, you know what, I need to improve on this, because what I'm doing right now is not a good thing I'm doing. I'm just creating, even though I might be solving smaller problems like it's shown at the beginning with the muggers and the guy doing the stick up and the graffiti people, like they're scared, and I love that opening because it's the first Batman film to, Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice I think would have been like this had it been completely focused on Batman. I think if Ben Affleck did his Batman film, it would have been a lot like that. But because that film is also setting up, Batman v Superman, it's a Superman film as well, and it's got setting up the Justice League, it could only do hints of it, and I'm talking about like the scene where they rescue those women who are being, part of sex trafficking, and they've been kidnapped, and that policeman, goes upstairs, and there's Batman on the roof, and there's that whole dramatic build-up. It's like this whole film, this whole opening was basically a really elongated version of that, in a good way, not as in an insult, where it's just showing you, Batman isn't a superhero. He's not like, yay, Batman. You're like, oh, fuck, it's Batman. He's also not referred to as Batman many times, only 2 or 3 times in this film. In fact, he's just referred as Vengeance, because that's what he keeps telling people he is. I'm Vengeance.
I'm Vengeance.
So he's called Mr. Vengeance, or just that. So, or Zorro. He's called Zorro almost as many times as he's called Batman in this film. That's how minimal amount of times he's called Batman. But I just love everything about this film. I love how the ending is a continuation of, yes, fear is needed for the Gotham criminals, but you also got to be seen as a hopeful light for the good people, because at this moment in time, all he's seen as this urban myth of a scary vigilante who fucking breaks people who he doesn't like in the middle of the night. So yeah, I just love that whole little thing there. Now quickly, I've got to talk about it, because I can't talk about this film in a spoiler video without talking about it. The Joker scene with Riddler and Joker. Does it feel a little bit tacked on? Yes, it does a little bit. I'm not one of those people who's like, oh shit, it feels like the studio made him do it, because I know they didn't. I know that was what Matt Reeves wanted to do, and I know what his argument was, where he had the 2 scenes, which one was cut, where it's Batman and Joker, and then Riddler and Joker, and he wanted to cut both out, and he did cut both out, but what he said is at the end of the film, he said it doesn't feel like, had they cut the Joker thing out, it doesn't feel like there's much of a reason for Batman to stay in Gotham, because obviously that whole scene with Catwoman, where she's saying, let's leave, even though as the audience it's obvious there will be a sequel, Matt Reeves said, it needed more story element, it needed a confirmation thing, because in universe is it obvious that Batman needs to stay, more so, yes, and as a logical standpoint, you're going to watch this film and go, yes, there is a sequel going to happen if obviously it does financially well, which it has done, which I'm very happy about, and I'm very glad for everybody involved, and I'm glad that a sequel is basically all but confirmed, and I'm certainly excited for whatever that may be, and I'm excited for all the spin-offs as well. I do see Matt Reeves' point where he's like, but I needed a scene which shows that it hasn't just ended perfectly, that there are more problems lurking, that Batman, obviously the city's flooded, and there's that bit of speech where he's talking about how things will get worse before they get better, looting will happen, and the criminals will use this advantage, the chaos to their advantage. I do agree with Matt Reeves that yes, maybe you could argue is it sequel baiting, but you need a bit of sequel baiting in a film like this. You need just that little hint. But I will make a video talking about that Joker scene. I know I'm so late, but there's so much I want to talk about it. Because honestly, I do think that scene with Batman and Joker should have been kept in this film. Would have it added another 10 or 15 minutes in? Yes, because obviously not only is it a 6-minute scene being put in the film, which would add 6 minutes, you would then probably have to have a scene before and after, or at some other point to try and work it in a bit more. I doubt it would just cut to that scene, and then as soon as that scene's done, it would just cut to the film. I bet there's, I could be wrong, but I bet there's a few other minutes of film that would need to be put in for that scene to work, with that, work being put in, because it would just be a bit jarring if it was just like boom, in, out, out. I could be wrong, but yeah, I certainly think that they should, that would be the case, that it could, putting that scene in, as well as the scene, all together with everything else, it could add up like another 10 or 15 minutes to the film's runtime. But I do hope when it's released on home media that they do put that scene back in, because I do think it would improve the film. I love the Batman using Joker as like a Hannibal Lecter. Never really seen that in live action, Joker not being the main villain, him actually being sort of like at that scene in the Under the Red Hood where he's going talking to Joker. Having him use Joker like that in live action has not been done before, so I do think that they should have kept the scene in the film, and I do hope when they release it to physical media it's actually in the film itself and not just like in the special features or anything like that. It would be cool if they put it in the film, and I would certainly love that, and I certainly think it should have been kept. I'll talk about that whole scene and everything about that in another video, because that's a different thing. Even though I am late, I do want to make it, but I will be doing my Morbius and Moon Knight episode 1, and as it's Tuesday, probably Moon Knight episode 2 first, because I just want to keep up to date on those things. I know I'm late with that, and I'm going to be even more late with it, but I do want to keep up to date with those other things as much as I can do. So yeah, going to be busy, which I'm happy about because I do want to do this more. I'm going to really try and get into doing this. So yes, as in more, you know what I mean. But yeah, I did love that little Joker scene. You didn't see a lot of his face in the scene we got. You didn't hear a lot from him in the scene we got. But that little tease we did get, I did think was great. I did love the look. I did love Barry Keoghan's performance as the character. It's easier to think about now, the deleted scene, because obviously it was a lot more of it. But even in just that small bit we got in this film, I could tell, I was like, yeah, I'm for this. I do enjoy this. I know apparently he's not fully the Joker yet, but he's clearly very prototype, like going to be Joker. And if I was to compare it, I would feel like it was Jerome from Gotham mixed with sort of like, I don't know, it feels like a mixture of even Jared Leto. I even feel like there's a bit of Jared Leto Joker in there, in terms of, especially with the like with how he pokes at people. So, because obviously there's that scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League with the Joker where he's just poking at Batman. It does have a bit of a feel like that. So it feels like a combination of all the Jokers with a bit of his own mixture in, serial killer vibes. Very articulate, very intelligent, very clearly motivated by something which we don't know yet. So yes, I am looking forward to more of this character. I know Matt Reeves said he might not bring him back, but I hope he does, just because I love this version of the character. But yeah, I know this talk's been all over the place, and that's why I said I'm probably not going to call it a review, because it's more just me talking about things I wasn't so sure about, but things I did absolutely love. So yeah, that's why it's a bit all over the place, just because there's things coming to my mind. I did write some notes down, but even then, one of my notes was just like talk about things which will come to your head, because things have come to my head since talking which I didn't write down on my notes. So yeah, there's just so much to talk about with this film. Like there's so many quick little things, like the whole thing with Catwoman and Falcone's great, with the whole Anarchist, that whole little subplot, and how it works its way into the main plot's great. Batman and Alfred's relationship's great, that whole like father exchange, and he's like, you needed a father and all you got was me, and him being like, and I love when Bruce Wayne said, I never thought I'd feel that fear again, but I now know when I will feel that fear again is the fear of losing someone I love. I love that whole bit. There's just so much. Everything at the Iceberg Lounge, great. No one covering old ground, but the whole scene of Catwoman with using Batman's contact lenses, which like record things and ID people. That was fantastic. There's just so much of this film I absolutely love. I could talk about it. I mean, I could make a video on the first 15 minutes just because of his opening narration. I just loved it all. And the ending of this film is brilliant. I love Batman's closing narration. You know, when he's talking about the start of the film, you know, I don't know if I'm having an effect at the end of the film. I see now I am having an effect, but I need to change what I'm doing because of that guy saying, I'm vengeance. The guy he almost killed by beating him to death, one of Riddler's goons. He's realised he's inspired Riddler. He's created Riddler. He's giving this lunatic the idea to go and be crazy and go and harm these people and do it the way he's doing it, wear a mask, becomes an identity. Slightly contradicts the prequel book, but in terms of what Riddler's end goal was, because he was like going to do that anyway. But I can see that he would have ramped up and been inspired to much, much bigger things by Batman. He's realising I need to be a view of hope as well as just a view of fear, because people are clearly taking this message and going off the rails of it. Similar like to the opening in The Dark Knight, where you've got those other people dressed as Batman who are going around trying to shoot people, and because obviously they're killing people or trying to kill people, and in doing so also going to get themselves killed because they're clearly not prepared for this. It's basically that little small idea that The Dark Knight had. This film basically makes a plot out of it and makes it be the main villain's, essentially the main villain's motivation. So I just love that idea, and I love how at the end he's like, no, I need to be something more, something better. This city needs hope. And I love when he's carrying that woman and she gets airlifted, but she doesn't want to let go of Batman. She's like holding on to him, and he's sort of like, it's okay, you'll be okay. You know, I just love that whole ending. It's so optimistic. And even though I certainly still want this franchise and future films and going forward to still be the darkest live-action Batman film series, I do like how this film ends on a more optimistic note for Batman than how it starts, because had it, even though a really just long, dark detective thriller would have been great, there wouldn't have been a lot of emotion in that. It would have just been a dark, scary film. So I like how this film goes. Batman is realising I need to be more than just angry psycho Batman. It could go back down that road again in future events, especially if he gets a Robin who gets killed, be it Dick Grayson or Jason Todd. I know Jason Todd is the one in the comics, but the films don't always stick to the comics. So whatever they do with future with that, you know, in the future with that would be really interesting to see. I'm excited for whatever they do in the future. I'll certainly be going to see the sequel as soon as that comes out, as soon as that's made. Very much looking forward to it. I love this film. I could make so many more points. I do feel unsatisfied right now with how I can't convey it. Like, but this video would just be so long. I just love the ending. I love the optimistic future side of it and Batman realising to be hope. I love the opening. I love everything in the middle, really. Yes, do I have a few little nitpicks and questions? Yes. But it's a 3-hour-long film. It's the first film in a new franchise. And it's trying to set a lot of things up, so am I bound to? Yes. But one thing I will give this film a lot of credit for, it feels like a live-action Arkham game. You feel like you're following Batman going to these different locations and working so many different characters into the story and doing it well, where they don't feel hand-fisted in. It's not like how Sony do it with their Spider-Man films, where they like shove as many things in as possible. It doesn't feel like that. They all work as many things into the story, and that's why I'm also excited for the sequels, because you could easily get 3 or 4 Batman villains into a future film without it being like a Batman and Robin or Batman Forever, or even Batman Returns, even though Batman Returns is much better than those 2 films, although I do like Batman Forever. So yeah, release the Schumacher cut, by the way, whilst we're at it. But they don't need to be this big main villain, main focus. You can have one main villain and have other people being, you know, weaved into that. You could there's so many things you could do. You could have a Court of Owls film and have Joker be in the same film, and have Joker be part of that. You know, not part of the Court of Owls, but the Court of Owls use Joker. Or I don't want to do League of Shadows again, but if you wanted to do just that sort of thing where they use Joker as a diversion for Batman. I actually want, here's one thing, I want personally Joker in every film in this franchise. I don't want him to be the main villain, but I want him to be part of it. I want him to be there in the background, like in this film where he's causing problems. I actually don't want a sequel to this film where the Joker is the main villain except for maybe the final act of the last film, where if you did it under the Red Hood storyline, the final act in the final film of this franchise, whenever that may be it the third film, the fifth film, the fourth film, the fifth film, the sixth film, the 10th film, however many they make. I don't want another trilogy. I'd want 4, just because I don't want another trilogy, because then you're just going to compare it to the last trilogy, and not everything needs to be a trilogy. There are other ways of doing it, so I do hope they do more than just 3, but I would like the final act of the final film in this franchise to be very Joker. It could be live action under the Red Hood thing with Jason Todd and that whole thing. It could be whatever they wanted it to be, or even a Dark Knight Returns sort of like tunnel of love scene where Joker kills himself or something like that. But I want Joker to be in all the sequels as a presence, and that's also why I would want them to put the other scene back in this film, so then they could actually do that, because I would love that to be a thing, just Joker be in the films just as a thing to get under Batman's skin, to cause problems to the villains, or the villains to use him. Just a thing like that, I would absolutely love that. Whatever they do though, I'd be very excited. There's so many things they can do. There's so many things they could do, like just to build off this. I am very excited for the future of this franchise. I absolutely love this film. I love the start of this film. I love the middle of this film, and I love the ending of this film. I absolutely adore it. Certainly recommend it if you haven't watched it. But if you haven't watched it, I mean, you're watching a spoiler video. But even then, I'll still recommend it. This film is fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I loved the entire cast. I loved pretty much everything about this film. I can't wait to see more in the future. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. I might even make a sequel to this video one day, talking about this film even more, just because I love it that much. I really do. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you do. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you watch my next one, which will probably either be my Morbius review, but if I did release that before I did this video, end up releasing this video, it will probably be Moon Knight episode 2, or maybe even the Joker video, I don't know. But whatever it may be, I hope you stick around for that one, and I would also appreciate it if you did enjoy this video, if you go and check out some of my previous ones as well. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.